I wonder if you can really imagine what this beautiful valley was like in 1850, with families here, a population of almost 1,000, almost 100 miles from Sydney. And here in this one area of about 2,200 acres was contained a complete community, church and gardens and beef, and then as well as the major labor of the property, which was kerosene, shale, and coal. And this bustling life of children and women and butcheries and bakers, stables, the railroad, and all of this contained within a very small area of what we call a valley proper of about 220 acres. And it was called Joadja. I've spent a good part of my lifetime trying to find a place such as this. I felt that I could practice my particular profession here better than I could in the States, because my property in the States was more or less complete, and there was no more challenge left to me there. And this property certainly opened horizons to me where I could practice my profession fully here. Also, it allowed me to introduce ideas that my father has believed possible for a long time, but we were unable to practice in the States because we didn't have the type of property to do it. But my valley had been here, and I wanted it, and I was going to get it. And nothing was going to sway me one way or the other. Either I was going to get it, or I was going home. Flatten it out, and you'd have about 10,000 acres, and all of it uphill. There's some of it that nothing short of a cotton-picking kangaroo could get over. And there's some of it that nobody but a kangaroo would want to get over. But I know where my boundaries are, I think. And I have yet to go through to my far western boundary, because it's approximately a day and a half's rod, and it means camping out. In winter, it's too cold, and I've never been here in the summer. I think the whole family, when they finally realized that I was quite serious about coming and working out here, and that the place demanded so much of myself, they realized that I really was determined to move out. Then they supported me completely and went out of their way to see to it that I had the finances when I needed them. And they certainly didn't do anything in any way to hinder me from coming. Mr. Lamberton is my general manager.
Move along there.
It was through a friend here in Australia that I was able to locate Mr. Lamberton.
I came from Scotland. I went straight to Mr. Davis's property to caretake there, and then he asked me if I would look after this place for Miss Lee after she bought it, and I said I would. And, well, I've never regretted coming here. I've enjoyed it fine.
This is where I live. It used to be the old mine manager's house, and we've been able to do quite a bit of restoration work on it. The building itself is approximately, the records that we find, is a little over 100 years old. And it was in very bad repair until the work was started on it. But it's very livable now and very warm. the original name of Joadja was, the property was owned by a man who employed Aborigines. And the Aborigines who worked the sheep here, they were unable to pronounce the name of this man, who, by name, was Joe Hatcher. So rather than get it out in 2 words, they came out with Joadja. I think the valley, down here we get so much moisture from the river and the creek, you know, fogs and dews and whatnot, that this can be utilized and used if it's properly fertilized, properly taken care of. Now the top country is something else. It's very dry up there, but if it's irrigated, it'll be all right. That's what we're burning off for now, is we're trying to clear off 20 acres there to put in lucerne. At the moment, we're hauling our excess hay from the valley up to the top so that we can use the shed for the vehicles. That's something I stay away from nowadays pretty well, though, because it got my back down so badly lifting those darn bales. I can lift them as long as I don't have to lift them over my head. When I have to lift them over my head, I quit. I asked for a horse, and that's the one I got. But he's really quite a character. He's a personality all of his own. I actually got blisters on my hands trying to hold that silly thing in, and he's stretching out his neck, and he's pulling in his neck, and he's stretching it out again. My hands and my shoulders are going like my poor old back last night felt like nothing you could ever imagine. When I got home, I took a hot, steaming bath. I rolled into bed, and I couldn't move. Just couldn't move. I hurt too bad. It's very necessary when you move around on the property that you're able to get to all your fence lines. This cannot be done by car or tractor in many places. So a great deal of time is spent on horseback checking fences for holes caused by wombats and kangaroo, and checking the pastures and checking the land as a whole. This is an interesting old structure that is 116 years old and was used as a church and community building. On Sundays, it was used by the Roman Catholics and the Presbyterian Protestants, and as such was not a consecrated building. But the community used it during the week for community fun, sayings, dances, and the children. Well, at the present time, we're running on a shoestring, and this will probably be the case for at least another 3 years. But in the meantime, we have no finances for purchasing stock, and the property is open for adjustment. But we're hoping that the general public will be interested in the valley enough to come in and inspect it, and in doing so, we've asked for 50 cents a person for a day's visit into the valley, or 75 cents per person for camping. But when the town was beginning to wane, and the company decided that they were going to no longer use it, they decided that nobody was ever going to come in here again and use the valley for its original purpose. The valley started going downhill after 1897. We've heard tell that the reason for it, and there are several different reasons, was that the coal fields in Wollongong had been found at that time, and the coal was easier to extract. And the kerosene was beginning to lose its demand, as it had its original purpose, of course, was for lighting. And when they started using electricity, then, of course, the need for kerosene wasn't so great, and they found other sources for it. The valley was shut down approximately 1903. The Australian Kerosene and Oil Company shut it down overnight, which is still in evidence by the ovens. And the some of the people stayed here to operate the orchards for some time after that, apparently till 1920, between 1920 and 1930. Then the Kerosene Oil Company moved in at that time and blasted out all of the buildings so that they could never be used again.
Now, all the cottages were built with the bricks that was made in the valley, and each cottage cost £12.10 to build. The cost of the building it was £12.10. The smallest would be in the village. The main street in the village would be 2 bedrooms and a living room. And then there was the bachelors' quarters. They'd be single ends for bachelors. They imported the bricks from Britain, Scotland and England, and it was more for fire bricks. They manufactured their own bricks here for the building of the cottages.
In between times, if we have nothing else to do, we clean and stack bricks. And these we put aside in a convenient place so that we can get to them to repair the buildings.
eventually they put the railway in and it done away with the bullock teams. The railway went from the top of the hill here at the steam winch to Mittagong. Oh, it was a good heavy winch, steam driven. And it took an hour and a half to do the journey. And that was how the people in the village got into the town to do their shopping or their day in the town. And it cost them 2 and 6, a single each way. It took them an hour and a half to travel 18 miles.
There was once this young miner who decided he was going out into the world to find himself a fortune. The old miners told him over and over again, your happiness is here, your fortune is here, and you don't want to leave. No, he said he had to go. He thought he'd go to Sydney or just most anywhere, but he was going to go to make his fortune. So he left in the middle of the night one night, and he went up Carter's Track. And on his way up, suddenly, it was a perfectly clear, starlit night, beautiful night. An enormous wind came up, and as he was climbing the track, the wind kept pushing him back down into the valley. He tried it again and again, and in the process of trying to do it, eventually a great gust of wind, like a giant hand, pushed him on the chest and shoved him back down in the valley. The number of people buried in the cemetery were approximately 67, although for myself I've only been able to locate approximately 27. The death of the young children was caused primarily by noxious gases from the valley, from the kerosene ovens, because of this sulfuric content in the smoke. And it's commonly agreed now that they did die from what we call today air pollution. Sometimes, when I ride any place on the property, but most particularly up on the hill country or over on the river country, there's a feeling of fullness. You know, the trees just seem to, they come alive. You can look down on the river, and you can see goanna, you can see rabbits, you see cattle over on the distant hill, and the place is alive. It fairly vibrates. You can feel it. But the valley was a place all by itself. There was green grass, the river was running full, the creek was running full, and it was just a place all of its own. I can spend hours on end doing absolutely nothing except listening to the birds and listening to the creek. It's fantastic. It's just peace and tranquility. There's no noise or confusion of traffic or people, or rarely hear a plane overhead. And you can just lay out anywhere on the property and listen, just listen. And you can hear the grass and the trees, and once in a while you're just very, very quiet. You can even hear the rapids running through the grass. It's very quiet. You can walk down on the creek and down through the gorge, and your creek will change. You can have long stretches of smooth, quiet, very slow-moving water, and then maybe 50 feet upstream it may be just bubbling and running and just tearing around down through there. And you have checkerboard patterns all over the place, from the leaves overhead and the branches of the trees, and the trees just move with the noise of the creek. Oh, it's fantastic. Of course, I'm prejudiced, you understand. I just wonder what the people then would think of this crazy American today taking over their town.